Hey, how's everyone doing? This is the Melvin Live Show, and great to be here. Well, today is one of those days that I'm not wearing my standard outfit. Um, well, instead, I'm wearing this. So, in case you didn't you didn't notice, so once again, thank you all for being here. Really, really, honored and excited at the same time, and anxious at the same time as well. Because I think for the longest time, I've been practicing in a controlled environment, and until recently, that I decided to open up to more platforms when I'm doing the live stream. And as I am doing that, actually, I'm getting much more engagement, but at the same time, I think the whole experience of it's a lot more of a sense of accountability and responsibility that I see. So, in any case, thank you all for your feedback. Thank you, Ryan, for sending me that wonderful video message on LinkedIn. Um, as I have told you, Ryan, and I will also tell the audience here that that was a really, really that was a message that really, really meant a lot to me, um, because someone actually take the time to record a video to tell me about my live show and how he has been, enjoying it, and that feedback is just tremendous uplift for me. So once again, Ryan, if you're watching this, thank you very much. All right. So, and of course, I have a few folks here that is always been very, very supportive of me. And of course, one of them is good friend Ali from the Middle East. Because I think um, each and every time when I am posting something on LinkedIn at least, right? Or, I'm sharing something, Ali never fails to show up and give me his encouragement. And so to Ali, thank you so much for your encouragement and your endorsement as well. I mean, it may seem like something that is really, really small to you, but it means a lot to me, right? And also the other thing with regards to my YouTube channel itself is that I've seen I have been seeing growth in the number of subscribers. And again, once again, this is really, really encouraging because in the last couple of days, I have actually seen quite a good growth trajectory. And so that is kind of something that I'm looking forward to. And, I'm putting in the work, and I'm seeing all these things that are happening. So, it's a wonderful feeling to know that it has made a difference. I mean, it may seem small to some of you, right? I mean, some of you have got like thousands of subscribers on YouTube itself. I don't, not yet. Um, but when I look at the performance in the last 28 days, right? When I look at the performance in the last 28 days, I'm saying, I'm saying that there is a plus eight, right? There are eight people who are actually, subscribed um, to the channel itself. That I have an increase of eight, subscribers. That it's really, really also really, really encouraging. And once again on the LinkedIn itself, Wasim, yeah, Wasim, thank you, for leaving me that comment. I aspire to do great work. This is something that I kind of want to remind myself. And actually, great stands for an acronym that I've been using. G stands for God first. R stands for relationship, E stands for emotion, A stands for actions, and T stands for talent. Right. So, whenever I talk about great work, right, is I look at it as the piece of work. It's God first. It's about relationship. It's not about metrics. It's not about numbers. Numbers are good, but for every number that you get there, there is a person behind it. There is a child, a husband or a wife or a son or a daughter, and every single person behind those numbers have got a story, right? And I just want to be able to make the kind of impact, and also to be able to contribute back to the community itself. I know 2020 has not been easy for everyone, and as before we kind of dive into 2021, I would want to also do a 2020 a review, right? And I want to do that in the form of a live stream as well. Okay, so thank you one and all, for your encouragement and being with me on the journey itself. I want to be able to contribute back to you, and so if there is any way, shape, and form that you have a question pertaining to how live streaming is going to be able to help you or your small business or your one person 1 million all digital business, make sure you send me an email, leave your questions in the comments on any of the platforms that you are watching this from. Go ahead and do that, and I'll be more than glad to answer any of those questions, right? So, all right, with that, today I want to talk about, I want to share with you this idea of the two variables when it comes to live streaming. Now, if you take one step back, um, and just look at video itself, right? Video in its raw form. Um, you know, I think the present context that we are in sometimes get us in a situation where we can't take certain things for granted. And when I say take certain things for granted, essentially what I meant by that is that the level of ease and convenience and possibilities that allow us to afford us to just pick up our cell phone and start creating a video, whether it's a recorded form or in live form. It's something that we kind of take for granted these days, right? But if you just take 20 years back, for example, creating a video itself, let alone a live stream, creating a video itself, it's probably going to cost you a bunch of money. And other than the creation part, you also have another issue to deal with. We'll come into that later part of this video itself. But I want to address the first part, which is the creation part. Now, the creation part, if you look at two things, one is that if you're looking at the cost of creating a video these days, the creation of the video these days has dropped tremendously, right? Because if you're not too fussy with the effects and all that stuff, you could very well be able to produce a video um, using nothing but just your cell phone, right? And that is something that it just completely blows my mind, because people like my kids, they will grow up in an environment whereby it is so easy to just make a video, right? Compared to people like me, I grew up in an environment whereby making a video would mean that you have to go out there and get a video camera, and because of the cost of the video cameras and also the number of times you get to use the video camera might not be a lot. So the cost of getting a video camera seem to be really really high, because you could spend like 600 over dollars just to get a very simple video camera. And how often do you use it, right? And as we know, with all electronic products, if you do not use it for a long time, the next time you want to use it, you may run into some problem. And so the whole idea behind being able to afford a video camera, at least in my days, was really, really huge. And besides, there wasn't much of a choice. And so you are just stuck with that few brands. And typically, it's more for the enthusiasts. And so as a result of that, you pretty much quite a fair bit of money for a video camera. But fast forward to our time right now, the camera in your cell phone, right? And I am using that as a blanket statement, because for the most part, for most of us who are fancy enough to want to own one of the latest cell phone, whether it's a smartphone, whether it's an iPhone or an Android phone, if you're just one two generations behind, arguably that camera in your phone is going to be of quite good quality. Now, how well you can use it, that's another thing altogether. But the ease of it, the fact that it is there with you all the time, and that it doesn't requires much cost to create a video, to take a video, to make a video, that whole thing is probably something that we kind of take for granted right now. So when it comes down to creating video, I mean, the cost of creating video has dropped tremendously. It has democratized the whole process of creating a video, right? So that's the first part. So no one in today's context, no one with access to a mobile device would have an excuse for saying that I cannot create video because I do not have the equipment, right? Because that's bullshit. We all have that in our pocket, right? So that is the first part. Now, when you talk about creation of a video itself, let's also dive a little deeper and look at it as a two separate elements within the creation of content. So one element of creation of content really looks into the creativity aspect, right? So you could just do a talking head video just like this and be done with that, right? And people would want to watch your video. So like someone who does a lot of talking head videos, right? Just so much talking head video is Judd Curtis, right? So if you go to YouTube and you look for his videos, many of his videos are just talking head with the occasional, overcam and some B rolls, but for the most part, his video are just talking head. But I enjoy consuming his content. So shout out to you, Judd. I enjoy, consuming his content. I enjoy his content, and I upvote his content for the very simple reason because when it comes to creativity, he's not that type where you would expect a great deal of creativity, but you would expect the other element, which is the content bit, right? And so when it comes into the content bit, he has got a huge insight into using of lighting and sound. In fact, many of the things that I learned to illuminate my scene, and also for how to use audio with the A10 mini, many of this were actually guided by his videos. So you should really check out Kurt, right? So um sorry, you should really check out Judd, right? So I mean, he's an all-round great guy, and you should definitely check him out. So I just want to mention his name again. It's Curtis Judd. My apology, Curtis Judd. I somehow I always get it wrong. My apologies, right? So Curtis Judd, Judd, and so his content is really phenomenal. So content, there is the production bit which we have already talked about, and then the content bit where you have creativity as well as the content in itself, right? That so there are two elements. So some of them probably can see a lot of creativity. So like people like Peter McKinnon, for example, you might see quite a fair bit of creativity in terms of the use of B rolls, um, you know, outside of the studio and all that. That it's really entertaining as well as fascinating to watch. But his content, it's also phenomenal because he dive deep, deeper than some, right? Less deeper than others, but he dived deep enough in that respect itself. So when it comes to content, of course, you want to look at the level of creativity as well as the depth of the content. So for me, right, I mean, I noticed that yes, I could get by with a very low cost of production of video, but what really interested me was that what if I could invest just another $100 more? Would it gives me a tremendous improvement in terms of my production value? And quite often the answer is yes, right? So I mean, I do not go out and get the most expensive light or the most expensive microphone or the most expensive camera. I can, but it will be an overkill. And besides, it will not justify the expenditure for me. So what I do is, with every piece of equipment, I would ask myself, how much is it going to cost, and how much improvement it's going to give me when it comes to the production value itself. So there are certain things like I've said, in previous videos, whereby I will pay attention to the camera that I use as well as the microphone that I use, because sound, I think, is just so important, and it has to capture that crisp audio and that clean audio that you get, so that if I'm looking at post production, after the live stream itself, it opens up a lot of possibility. It doesn't take too much work to do that, right? So the cost of production part, it's low. And what I do is would just look at what if I can, you know, put in another $100 or $200. Would that give me a phenomenal impact in terms of the improvement of my production value? And so whenever that is the case, I would go ahead and make that investment, right? So the cost bit. Now, the second part is the creativity part. And when it comes to the creativity part, because this is a live stream, not a recorded video, there are some limitations that what I can do, what I can't do, because I can simply grab this camera and walk out of my home studio here because there are going to be limitations, right? I mean, I just can't do that. If I want to, I can, but it's going to increase my cost of production a lot more, and perhaps it's not important in the kind of content that I'm creating. So what I'm really focusing more in terms of that is when it comes to the creativity part, it's how could I, introduce a more interesting scene and the background? How could I introduce, more interesting in the way that I create my thumbnail, for example? And shout out to John Seddington for letting me know that, my thumbnails are sick. Um, it- and so that is the other aspect of the creativity part that I see that I want to put in a bit more effort into that aspect. But the main effort that I'm really putting in is the aspect of the content per se, right? Because when I'm looking at the content, I want to not just make another video. I want to not just talk about a subject at a cursory level. I want to be able to talk about that topic in an in-depth level to talk about, it from a point of view of being strategic. Look at it from a point of view of a small business owner. Look at it from the point of view of someone who is building a $1 million uh, AR digital business, for example. So that in that respect itself, the content is going to be unique because of the fact that the worldview and the lens that I'm saying it through is going to be a bit different, right? And of course, the focus here is on actionable strategies for the 1% 1 million or digital business. And so that is the first variable, right? The first variable part. So what I see is that many a times people put in, and myself included, right? Many a times people put in so much effort into creating a piece of content, and that is good. That is awesome. That demonstrate that level of professionalism as well as that willingness to dive deeper than what anybody else would care to venture, and that is good, right? But that in itself is not going to be enough, which brings us to the second variable, right? So the first variable being the creation part. The second variable is actually, the distribution part. Now, so let's go back to, 20, 30 years ago when we talk about creating a video, let alone a live stream, right? Creating a video. You can, and the cost of creating is going to be pretty high. And because not many people are familiar with creating videos, so you probably have to hire someone who is a trained professional or someone who went to media school, for example, and that would go into the creation bit. But once you're done with the creation, right? I mean, let's say you commission someone to do a video for you. Once all that is done and it's within your budget, now this person is going to hand you the tape, right? He's going to hand you the tape and it's going to say, there you go, right? And that is not the end of your journey itself, because if you had the intention of creating a video and you want to share it with as many people as you can possibly show it to, you're going to run into a distribution issue. Now, once again, of course, if you are a big, you know, movie house and that, you would have access to all this distribution channel, right? But if you are looking at mass, mass distribution, you're probably looking at the best bet would be TV channel, and that is where you would run into huge amount of money issue, because unless you are independently wealthy, you own a network, for example. The last time I checked, none of my friends own a network, and so in order for you to distribute that video, it's going to be quite difficult. right? And so remember all the time where Uncle Tom would make all of us sit down in his home and make us watch his jerky homemade video of him and his family at Disneyland. And, we're really not too excited about watching that because, the creation of the content, it's pretty bad, right? But the only way that Uncle Tom can get us to watch it was, when we go to his house and that he had a captive audience and he would just turn on the TV and we're forced to watch it, right? But that's about it, right? Because he's not gonna be able to show it to like the town or the village or whatever. So distribution is a huge, huge, huge issue itself. Now, fast forward to today's context, right? Even my kids would say that, hey, can we just put this up on YouTube so that people can watch it? And as an example of the thing that I did with my son during the lockdown here in Singapore was that we created a simple video and we submitted it to for a competition, and he actually won first prize for it because of the video that he created. And how we got him to win the first prize was in addition to the judges' assessment. There was another part was popularity. So people have to upvote his video on Facebook, and the one that get the most vote, of course, will give him a better chance at clinching the title, which he did because his video got the most number of likes and the most number of views, and so as a result that he won the first prize. Now, so distribution now it's technically speaking free. I mean, like I said, last check, I don't know if any of my friends owned a TV network, but I know several of my friends who owns their own YouTube channel, right? And so, the concept may be mind blown to some of us because we're coming from a time where we didn't have access to all this distribution channel for free. But to people like my kids, right, and even the millennials, for example, they are growing up in an environment whereby distribution is something that they are beginning to take for granted because, oh, I'll just record something and I'll just upload that, right? So, let me know if what's your take on this, right? When it comes to content creation and distribution, which one are you struggling more with in terms of creating of content or the distribution of the content, right? So, just leave in the comment whether it's creation or distribution or creation plus distribution. What is it that you struggle with most? What is your greatest challenge? Go ahead and leave that in comment. And hi, Ryan, for dropping by on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, my friend. I mentioned you and I gave you a shout out earlier on this episode itself to say how much your message meant to me. And I just want to say that again in case you missed that. Right. And so, let's come back to the part here in terms of distribution. Right. So, if you want to be good at the content, right, creating of the content, and in our case here, live stream, if you want to be good at this, there are essentially two parts here to take into account, right? One is the creation part, right? The creation part, which would include the production, the creativity, and also the content. So that's the creation part. Now, you also have to take into account the distribution part. Now, I would say that, in the first 150 episodes of my live show, I was just showing it on YouTube. And at the point in time, I wasn't getting much of attraction. And along the way, I was getting frustrated. I was trying to do some things to boost the channel, not in paid form, but more in terms of engagement with other people's channel. But, it was just too time consuming. And I was just, I just do not feel that that investment of time would be a great payoff, right? You know, so 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 for me, really is that I find that the creating part is not so much of a challenge, probably because of the fact that I've created hundreds and hundreds of videos already. So the creation part wasn't much of a challenge for me. It was the distribution part that was clearly a challenge for me, right? Because I I was having trouble wanting to think about distributing it to all the different platforms or just to focus on one platforms itself. And it seems like when you talk to different people, they have a different opinion when it comes to distribution. So I'm not sure where they got their opinion from, whether it's through their own experience or through listening to other people. But here's my own experience. My experience is the following. Now, if you are a media brand, right, like you are Gary Vaynerchuk, for example, where you have that team of people who are out there helping you, repurpose the content in 10,000 different ways, pushing it out, then that's fine, right? I mean, you probably do not have an issue with the distribution. You probably can just focus on the creation part, right? And so, you know, for me and for anyone who is running this 1 person 1 million all digital business, we struggle with that, right? We struggle with the distribution. So there are two ways that you can do that. One, of course, you can just focus on one platform in terms of distribution, and then what you do is you slice it up into shorter videos, shorter content, and then push it out to other platforms. Now, that is absolutely possible, but you're probably going to need help, right? Like for at one point in time, I was getting some help and it was possible. But, when the help was not available, then it become really, really, a bit of a challenge for me. And so, as I alluded a couple of days back, where I signed on with Restream, and the reason why I signed on with Restream itself was that I recognize that perhaps as a 1 person 1 million old digital business, as a one-person business, right, it probably makes more sense for me to leverage a software that allows me to push out the same video to many many different platforms, as many platforms as I could push it out to. And the reason behind that is fairly simple because I do not have time to go and repurpose everything into multiple formats and put it all over the place. I mean, in theory, that sounds really, really great, but in reality, like I said, unless you have got help, that part is going to be a challenge. And so the way I look at it is that number one, the social media platforms now are paying a lot more attention to live stream, particularly because of the increased usage during the COVID lockdown, but also it's moving towards that idea of each of these platforms are a TV channel, right? And so you would probably switch from Facebook to LinkedIn to YouTube, just like how you would switch from History Channel to Discovery Channel to CNN, for example, right? And so you know the only way that right now that the way I see it is that live stream it's getting a lot more favorable organic reach compared to text posts, compared to a recorded video post, at least on Facebook and on LinkedIn. Live stream is getting a lot more traction and is getting a lot more organic reach in that respect itself. So I too do see that there is a particular preference and bias towards live stream content, and I want to leverage that, right? So I'm saying that, hey, this platform tends to prefer live stream content. And so if I'm already doing live stream, then if I could plunk in a little bit of investment into, or an expenditure into acquiring a software like Restream, um, and then allows me to broadcast at a high quality level to various platforms at the same time without me doing any additional work, right? I mean, it becomes a no-brainer. So when it comes to distribution part, it's really not just about the platforms that you choose, but how do you get maximum distribution impact. So it's akin like if someone goes to Facebook, now they will see my face. They'll go to LinkedIn, they'll see my face. They go to YouTube, they'll see my face. So whether it creates a oh gosh, I just want to get rid of this guy, or hey, this guy is everywhere. What's going on. Perhaps, the first time you see it, you turn it off. The second time you see it, you turn it off. The third time you see it, you might be, let's check out what this guy is doing, right? And so, it comes to a point whereby you think about distribution, and distribution becomes a key factor. And so I just want to bring up this from what I've been reading from Steph Smith, and she says that distribution is a multiplier. So think of it this way: if your content, it's you put in 100% into your content, but there's no distribution, right? Zero distribution. Then 100% multiplied by zero gives you zero, right? Because you are not distributing it out. You're just making the content and then you're keeping it to yourself, right? Why would you want to do that? Perhaps you're not comfortable sharing with other people. Perhaps you are afraid that other people might be critical of your content. And so you're holding back. So, if you do that, creation is 100%, distribution is zero, then you get zero, right? The impact of your content is going to be zero. Now, but if you put in 50% of the time into, the content bit and 50% of the time into the distribution bit, um, now things are moving a little bit different because you're not just looking at, hey, if I split my time into half and half, I'm going to get half the impact. No, in fact, you are going to get a multiplier effect, right? And so, I mean, I could dive deeper into this, but I won't, because otherwise, to some of you, I'm just belaboring the point. But you get the idea here. So whether you spend too much time on creating the content and not enough time on the distribution, maybe that's why your content is not getting that reach it deserves. Or you're spending a way too much time on distribution, but not thinking about creating the content, right? Creating the right stuff, right? The correct stuff, like what Ryan is saying, then um, it will also be an issue itself, right? You are everywhere, but whenever people watches your content, they're like, hey, but this is not good, which it's also not ideal. So what you really want to do is that, I mean, in an ideal world, you will want to split it into half and half, but you get the idea, right? So like for Ryan, he says that I find creation more challenging. Creating the correct stuff, that's a lot more challenging. And I would say I would agree with him as well, because until and unless we are very clear in terms of who is the audience that we want to speak to, um then we may not know is that the correct content to create, right? And so, in the other video I share about this, whether should you go with the topic first or the audience first, you can check out that video. Um, that one would give you a better idea in terms of where to start and how you're going to take it from, from topic, and then go down to audience and slicing the audience into different segment and going for the segment that's probably most profitable, or profitable as well as right. So Ryan, that would be something that you may want to consider. Start off with the topic that excites you, right? Topic that if given a chance, you can talk about it without stopping, right? That so that is a topic that you want to start off with. but that topic itself, you have to then look at, okay, this topic, is it for, which segment of the audience that you can potentially reach? And that's where you may want to narrow it down to that particular group of people, right? Once again, I mean, it's purely based on my own experience. It worked for me. It may work for you, or it may not work for you. So what I really encourage you to do is to take some of my suggestions and start experimenting with it. Throw in like at least 20, 30 episodes into creating the content, and then see what kind of feedback, or after you put out the content, send it out to a few people and then ask them for feedback. That could be something that you can do. All right. So Ryan, I hope that kind of gives you some idea. I would love to hear what is your process like as well. When it comes to creation, what is the process, or is there a particular element or formula or framework that you look at? And then when it comes to distribution, is there something that you look at as well? So in tomorrow's episode, what I would want to kind of give you a little bit of glimpse is that we're going to dive a little deeper into that distribution part. So for those of you who are wondering, where's the best place to distribute it to, we're going to look at the different channels, when we are also going to look at the different characteristic and the infrastructure behind each of these channels itself, and how you could push your content via those channels to get you that maximum impact, the very attention that your content deserve. That's the aim for tomorrow's session itself. So once again, as always, please share this with someone that you think would be able to benefit from. And if you haven't already, make sure you go ahead and like this video, right? Like, upvote this video. And then if you, depending on where you are watching this from, whether it's on LinkedIn, it's on Facebook or YouTube, make sure, I mean, if this content makes sense to you and this is something that you want to follow, in other words, you want to have actionable strategies for a one person business, if that is something that it's up, interest you, float your boat, then definitely considering subscribe to my YouTube channel. And just one more word is that I'm on the process of building up my subscriber list on YouTube, because I want to build it up to a certain level. And so it will really, really help if you can check out my YouTube channel. In the post today, you would see a link in the post whereby you could go to melvin.tv, and that will take you directly to YouTube, whereby you could subscribe, and do considering subscribing, because that would mean a great deal for me, and that would also mean that I would have a positive impact in terms of the number of subscribers in this last week itself. Like I said, the last 28 days, I've seen an increase by 8 subscribers. It may not mean much to most people, but it means a great deal to me, which means, if I were to have this 8 people sitting in front of me right now, I would have 8 more people to speak to, right? So on YouTube right now, I got like 202 subscribers. I mean, I can't even fit them into my home studio here, right? I probably have to lease a room if I'm going to talk to them face to face. So I never let that slip past me, because 202 in real life, it's a lot of people, right? And of course, in the internet space, in the internet world, it might not seem a lot, but and sometimes we take for granted. I want to make sure that I do not, and so that's where I'm coming from. All right. So once again, if you got questions, make sure you leave them in the comments, whether you're watching this live or in the replay. As I said, I answer all the comments and the questions. And if there is a need to, I'll create a standalone video just to answer your very question. So ask me anything. Um, the setup, the camera that I use, the audio that I use, the switcher that I use, the laptop, the lights, whatever you want to ask me when it comes to live stream. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is that, ask me anything about that one person digital business, right? Ask me anything about that, and I will share with you if I know. If not, we go on this journey together to find out what might be the best way to resolve some of those challenges. Okay, so it's been a great time speaking with you. I hope you learn a great deal. And with that, I thank you so much. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.